Yes, to introduce myself, Roland Scharrer, AXA Insurance, one of the global biggest insurers in the world, 100 million customers, 1 trillion asset under management. We are a major player in commercial insurances and health insurances in the US and in Europe, driving things forward. And within AXA, I'm responsible for data, AI, and emerging technologies. And we want to talk to you about the challenges in insurance is what we see up to today. First of all, Dave.
So Dave Brainard, CTO of EverQuote. I can't get to $1 trillion, sorry. $500 million in revenue, probably 600,000-700,000 a month. People come through our site looking for largely US P&C insurance, and why that is like relevant if you don't know a lot about insurance, and why I'm saying US versus global, you'll learn maybe in our conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to jump into some different risk categories that we're going to talk about.
Yes, when it comes to risk categories, things that we bother and things that we have to cope with every day. One of our biggest challenges is currently climate change from an insurance perspective. Climate change is a reality for us. It's already there. We see that one with natural catastrophes. We see that one with hard weather. The question is only how we act as an insurance company with that one. And to some extent, we're doing that one thanks to technology. Easy examples are using of satellite technologies. Lauren explained that one already. Satellite technologies is used to track, for instance, wildfires. We use that one for flood risks, and we use that one also to see the longitudinal effect of climate change. The tricky part is we see nowadays things that we don't really understand how to cope with that one and how to model that one in our AI models. For instance, spot rain. Rain, very hard rain on very concentrated areas, bringing flooding to an area. What we had in Europe beginning of last year that we struggled with a lot. And these things, we try to actually tackle them on technology, but we are very, very early stages.
Yeah, think about that. Like there's a brand new signal out there, like a brand new weather phenomenon, spot rain, right? That's like really hard to quantify and model.
Yeah. On the one side, we have the climate change. Natural catastrophe is one thing. On the other side is the climate transition. Our clients asking us, okay, we want to actually be now more driving new energies, driving renewable energies, how we can ensure that one. Unfortunately, a nuclear power plant is nowadays well understood. Okay, it happens once in a while that there's an accident. Be sarcastic a little bit. We want to ensure wind power plants in the future more. Unfortunately, offshore wind parks are offshore and usually exposed to hard weather, the nature of an offshore wind park. So how to actually use technology and IoT and the tracking of devices and the tracking of the weather in such a way to cope with that kind of risk that in the future we can ensure these kind of environments way easier than the existing ones that we actually know how to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, for us, especially in the US, right, climate is largely felt in like very specific areas in very specific ways. So you think about, I have a friend who's at a very large franchise they have most of their risk is in Florida. And so during hurricane season, right, you have a ton of carriers that come in, they try to price the risk appropriately, they may or may not do it, and then they just sort of drop out, right? So it's like, it's leaving people scrambling to find a carrier that will insure them, let alone get it at the right price, right? It's like, because climate change is happening so fast that it's sort of sometimes outpacing business. Another one that we're looking at right now are the snow, the huge snowpack in California. So I mean, I have skiers in my life. They've had a really nice winter and gone out there and done a lot of really fun things. But when that melts, and if it melts too quickly, we're going to see another wave of losses in California, right? Which ultimately then impacts like at least everybody else in California, impacts their rates, and it's going to continue to impact people across the US.
Climate is one thing.
Yeah.
Things that keep us awake at night.
Right.
Second topic is technology in itself. So Dave, tell us about technology and how you cope with that one, and technology advantages in the environment outside.
Yeah. So, again, for us, because we're US home and auto, right? That's primarily where we focus. What we're seeing there, again, is like, it's very difficult for carriers who are pricing that risk to keep up with the pace of technology. So, I'll give you a personal example, right? I have a car. That car is relatively new. And when I had a problem with it, I took it to the dealer and they said, we don't actually have anybody trained on this car. We don't know how to work on it. So we're gonna have to call back to headquarters. So we'll just leave it here and we'll let you know when we figure out what the problem is. Like, it was there for 4 weeks, right? And that's what's happening. Like, everybody that's investing in these EVs or low emissions vehicles, they're doing a really good thing. But what's happening is carriers aren't able to understand how long it's going to take to repair them. So that's causing the pricing to go up over time. So one of the problems we can solve is figuring out, like, actually it kind of ties into the supply chain, right? Like, if there's a part that isn't available for that car and you get in an accident and it takes 6 weeks for that part to show up, the carrier cost goes way up, right? And that's a supply chain issue that are some of the things that you're working on.
Yeah. When it comes to technology, of course, the insurance of artificial intelligence in itself is an issue. We saw easy steps in the last years already. Driver assistance solution in cars. Okay, park assistance solutions. Semi-autonomous driving, now autonomous driving. It's nice to have these solutions out there, but what is the risk associated with that one? Do we have enough data, do we have enough information to know how often can something happen and what can happen and how big is the damage around that one? And who is liable if an AI system in a car breaks down? Is it the passenger? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Is it a manufacturer of the system, the tier 1 supplier? Is it the data provider that actually was originally there to provide the data for the AI model that was trained on? Is it the digital twin environment that is maybe used for synthetic data to actually have a system trained on? These questions are there. Currently, in the society, there is no solution for that. There is a ping-pong game between carriers, customers, solution providers, and regulators, how to cope with their technology advantages and how to cope with the risks associated with that one. What we're doing in first step is bootstrapping these risks, building test benches around artificial intelligence and autonomous systems to understand their risks better. So artificial intelligence is used to actually cope with artificial intelligence with adversarial models bouncing against the edges of an autonomous system.
Yeah, and your problem space is even more profound than, let's say, an individual carrier that insures a single car, because you insure fleets, correct? So you think about that, right? If there's like an over-the-air update that gets it wrong on a fleet, and then that fleet malfunctions, right? Like, the level of exposure that your company would have is very, it's even more, it's bigger than what we have.
It can be easily a systemic risk how to drive that one further. Imagine an AI provider for an autonomous car system is actually have a major breakdown or has a failure around that one. It doesn't affect only one car, it affects millions of cars at the same time. Okay, who is coping with that kind of damage and that kind of repair on the long run?
Right, yeah. So then we were going to talk a little bit too about social inclusion, right? And what the risk is of that and how that's being mitigated.
Yeah. Social inclusion. Tricky part is how to ensure people that don't have the proper digital literacy. We all talk about insurances that we actually can buy on mobile apps, that we can actually click on the internet and have them on automatically. Unfortunately, the people that are in most need of insurances are the ones that don't have the proper literacy. People living in suburbs, people living in poor countries, older people that actually don't use technology interfaces at all. So how to cope with that one? Because we don't want to carve them out. We want to actually be inclusive, bring them on board, because they are the biggest need to actually have an insurances, have a, call it, resilience layer in their life to actually cope with their challenges. To some extent, we're using as well technology to cope with that one. Large language models helps, for instance, here. When you think about an insurance contract, I don't know if one of you have ever written or have ever read the insurance contract you have for your home insurance or your car insurance. It's a nasty document written by lawyers for lawyers. It is, huh? It is, correct? So how should my grandmother cope with that one? Large language models can be easily used to summarize contracts, re-explain that one. Using ChatGPT, can you explain that one in easy words? What is written down in that complex text? These are first steps where you see that modern artificial intelligence technologies can cope with people that don't have the digital literacy. Because we can explain things in an easier manner, into an easier way to drive them on further. And these are first use cases to get more inclusive in the way of doing business. Unfortunately, when it comes to the pure risk, you have a bigger problem around that one as well. Because you actually have to insure sometimes people that are living in risky areas. Unfortunately, poor people live in high crime areas, living in high flood risk areas, high fire risk areas. So how to cope with the risk and how to price that one is a mutual, and how to build an economical system around that one that is valid for society and have the mutualization effect.
Yeah, that's great. And the last topic we wanted to cover, I think we have a little time left, like a minute, is cyber. So, that's a huge one, right? Like if you talk to any insurance expert, they'll say like the one thing nobody's figured out is how to do cyber insurance.
Yeah. The tricky part of cyber risk, it's the variety of cyber risk. And what is the damage associated with that one? If somebody hacks your commercial company and steals 100 million credit card numbers, but never uses it, what is the damage? What is the damage? You have to figure out how to actually drive that one forward, how to actually cope with the cyber risks, how to cope with a risk that is emerging. Thanks to artificial intelligence, it even gets worse around that one, because you see phishing attacks, you see cyber incidents, you see fake infrastructures arising. So how to cope with that kind of environments and how to manage that risk appropriately to build a resilience layer in the society.
Yeah, and from a technology perspective, right, like the tools you're going to see coming out that do like code linting and do vulnerability probing, et cetera, on your code base, they're going to become just like amazing, right? So it's like you're going to see this race taking place from all different sides. I don't know who's going to win yet, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how these develop as you go along.
Yeah. With that, we want to introduce you to these 4 big challenges: climate, social inclusion, the technology in itself, and the downside and cyber risk that keeps us awake at night. And all hands on board, because this is an industry that is necessary for society to run in an efficient manner. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.